Let me ask you a question. What was the worst moment of your life? Mine was walking into my bedroom after 18 months overseas and hearing my wife whisper my best friend's name. I defended my country for 18 months. I came home early to surprise her. My best friend's truck was in my driveway. His boots were by my bed. And my wife, she was wearing his dog tags. The two people I trusted most in the world. One promised to love me forever. The other promised he'd protect my family while I was deployed. Staff Sergeant Marcus Reid pressed his forehead against the cold window of the military transport plane, watching darkness give way to the first hint of American soil below. 18 months of sand, blood, and brotherhood were behind him. Home was less than 12 hours away. His phone buzzed with a new message notification. Sarah. His heartbeat quickened as he opened it. Miss you so much. Can't wait for you to be home next month. Love you always. Marcus smiled, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. She had no idea he was coming home early. The surprise had taken weeks to arrange, calling in favors, switching rotations, keeping it secret even from Jake, who usually knew everything. His fingers tapped out a deliberately vague response, missing you too. Soon. He scrolled to Jake's last message from yesterday, got your 6 on the home front, brother. Sarah's good. House is good. Everything waiting for you just like you left it. Marcus closed his eyes, exhaustion washing over him. In his dreams, Sarah ran toward him across their front lawn, her honey blonde hair catching sunlight, her arms open wide. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into this devastating true story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that button because stories like this need to be heard. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this unfolds. The Uber pulled into Marcus's suburban driveway at 2:17 a.m., headlights briefly illuminating a truck parked in his usual spot. Jake's Ford F-150 with a distinctive Marine Corps sticker on the back window. Marcus felt a momentary warmth. Of course Jake would be checking on Sarah, probably fixing something around the house. That was Jake, reliable as sunrise. This is you, right? The driver's voice broke through his thoughts. Yeah, this is me. Marcus grabbed his duffel bag, tipped generously, and stepped out into the cool night air. He stood in the driveway for a long moment, looking at his home. The porch light was on. Second floor bedroom light too. His key slid into the lock with a familiar click. The door swung open silently. He'd oiled those hinges himself before deployment. The house smelled like home, Sarah's favorite vanilla candles, that old leather couch they'd splurged on as newlyweds. And something else. Jake's aftershave. Combat instincts rippled through Marcus's body. Something felt wrong. He moved through the entryway without turning on lights. His eyes registered details in rapid succession. 2 coffee mugs on the counter. Both still warm. Jake's boots by the stairway. Not his work boots. His going-out boots. Sarah's earrings on the side table. The ones he'd bought her for their 5th anniversary. A trail of clothes leading up the stairs. Marcus moved like he was back in hostile territory, each step deliberate, his breathing controlled. The bedroom door was partially open, soft light spilling into the hallway along with sounds. Laughter. Whispers. Sarah's voice, husky and intimate. Jake. Not his name. Not her husband's name. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway. Time collapsed. 18 months of survival, of counting days, of holding their image in his mind during the worst moments, all distilled into this single, shattering second. What will a trained soldier do when the enemy is the 2 people he loved most? The bedroom froze in tableau, Sarah and Jake tangled in sheets, their expressions morphing from passion to horror as they registered Marcus standing in the doorway. Sarah clutched the sheet to her chest, her wedding ring catching the lamplight. Jake, shirtless and stunned, sat up slowly like a man facing a loaded weapon. In that suspended moment, Marcus's mind fractured into before and after. Asterisk before dot asterisk. 8 years earlier, For Bennying. Basic training. Marcus Reid stood at attention, sweat trickling down his spine despite the January chill. The drill sergeant was singling out recruits for perceived infractions when the lanky recruit beside Marcus swayed slightly. "Lock your knees and you'll drop like a rock," Marcus whispered, barely moving his lips. The recruit adjusted his stance. When the drill sergeant moved on, he whispered back, "Jake Morrison." "Thanks, man." That night in the barracks, Jake's bunk was next to his. They talked in hushed tones about why they'd enlisted. Marcus spoke of structure, purpose, the family military tradition he wanted to honor despite his father walking out when he was 7. Jake talked about escaping his hometown, proving himself. "Never had a brother," Jake said. "Always wanted one." Marcus nodded in the darkness. "Same." 3 months later, they were inseparable. They pushed each other through the worst days, celebrated the victories, became the brothers neither had grown up with. When they got their first weekend pass, they went to a local bar together. That's where Marcus saw Sarah for the first time. She was laughing with friends, her blonde hair catching the dim light. Marcus couldn't look away. "Go talk to her," Jake nudged him. "Not my league," Marcus responded, taking another sip of beer. Jake rolled his eyes. "We just survived Hell Week. You afraid of a pretty girl?" Marcus walked over. Sarah looked up, smiled, and the world tilted on its axis. Asterisk after dot asterisk. "Marcus," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. You weren't supposed to be home yet." The absurdity of her statement hit him like physical pain. That was her first thought? Not guilt, not remorse, but inconvenience at his timing? Jake was already reaching for his pants, military efficiency in his movements. "Brother, I can explain." "Don't call me that," Marcus said, his voice unnaturally calm. "Don't ever call me that again." Asterisk before dot asterisk. Their wedding day. Jake stood as best man, thumping Marcus on the back as Sarah walked down the aisle. "Luckiest man alive," Jake whispered, genuine happiness in his voice. Later, at the reception, Jake raised his glass, "To my brother, not by blood but by choice. And to Sarah, who makes him happier than I've ever seen him. I promise you both, whatever you need, whenever you need it, I'm there." Marcus remembered the fierce hug that followed, the absolute certainty that these two people were his foundation, his home no matter where the military sent him. Asterisk after dot asterisk. Marcus's eyes locked on Jake's dog tags hanging between Sarah's breasts. The metal that symbolized service, brotherhood, identity, now a perverse accessory to their betrayal. "How long, Sarah?" Marcus asked, surprised at how steady his voice remained when everything inside him was collapsing. Sarah's eyes darted to Jake before answering. That tiny gesture told Marcus everything. They had rehearsed this moment, anticipated it, prepared for eventual discovery. 6 months, she said quietly. "Since 3 weeks after you deployed." Asterisk before dot asterisk. The night before his deployment, Marcus sat on their back porch with Jake. Sarah was inside, packing last-minute items into Marcus's bags. "I need to ask you something," Marcus said, staring at the stars. "Anything," Jake replied. "Watch over her for me." "I know it's a lot to ask." "It's not," Jake interrupted. "She's family. You're my brother. I'll check on her every week, make sure she's never alone, that she's safe. I promise." They clasped hands, a grip as solid as Marcus's faith in both of them. Later that night, Sarah held Marcus so tightly he could feel her heartbeat against his chest. "I'll wait for you," she whispered. "No matter how long it takes." Asterisk after dot asterisk. Jake stood now, fully dressed, hands slightly raised like he was approaching a volatile situation. Combat stance, threat assessment. "Marcus, let's talk about this like adults." Marcus felt something shift inside him. A cold, analytical clarity replaced the initial shock. He recognized it from missions, the calm that descends when emotions become a liability. His intelligence training activated: observe, analyze, strategize. There's nothing to talk about, Marcus said, turning to walk away. Marcus, wait! Sarah called out, panic in her voice. Don't just leave. We didn't plan this. Another lie. Marcus registered it clinically, filing it away as evidence. Before. Marcus remembered the day he got his acceptance into military intelligence. Sarah had thrown him a small party, just the three of them. Jake brought expensive whiskey. To the smartest guy I know, Jake toasted. They're lucky to have you. The training's intense, Marcus had explained. They teach you to think differently, to see patterns, to anticipate moves and countermoves. Like chess? Sarah asked. More like poker, Marcus replied. Recognizing tells, calculating odds, knowing when to hold position and when to strike. Jake had looked at him with admiration. Scary to think about you using that brain against someone. After. Marcus walked down the stairs, each step measured. He heard them scrambling behind him, Sarah throwing on a robe, Jake following at a distance. Their panic was palpable, but their fear wasn't for him, it was for themselves, for the consequences now bearing down. Marcus paused at the front door, still not looking back. His wedding photo hung on the wall, Sarah in white, Jake standing beside him, all three smiling. The memory overlaid with present betrayal like a photographic double exposure. Marcus, Jake's voice was closer now. Don't do anything you'll regret. We should talk. Marcus turned, meeting Jake's eyes directly for the first time. You know what they taught me in intelligence training? How to identify a threat. How to neutralize it. How to dismantle something so completely that it can never be reconstructed. Jake took an involuntary step back. You think you know me, Marcus continued, his voice dropping lower. You don't. Not anymore. He walked out into the night, leaving the door open behind him. In his truck, he sat motionless, hands gripping the steering wheel. His phone buzzed with a text from another soldier in his unit. Hey man, finally back stateside? Saw Jake and Sarah at the Riverside Hotel last month, figured you knew they were keeping each other company. Good on you for being cool with it. Marcus stared at the message as a second wave of realization hit him, everyone knew. His friends. Their friends. He was the punchline to a joke that had been running for months. In the rearview mirror, he could see Sarah on the porch in her robe, Jake's hand on her shoulder, both watching him with expressions caught between fear and relief. They thought they knew what came next, the predictable explosion of the betrayed husband, the angry confrontation. The script they'd prepared for. Marcus started the engine. He wouldn't give them what they expected. They had no idea what was coming. Because even in his darkest moment, Staff Sergeant Marcus Reid remembered his training: the most dangerous opponent is the one whose next move you cannot predict. The motel room smelled of industrial cleaner and decades of cigarettes poorly masked by air freshener. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone as messages accumulated like incoming fire. Jake, please call me. We need to talk. This isn't what you think. Sarah, come home. We can work through this. I made a mistake. Jake, I know I broke the code. I know I betrayed you. But don't throw away your marriage over this. Sarah, I still love you. Please don't do anything rash. Love. The word hung in the digital space between them like a cruel joke. Marcus remembered the first time Sarah had said it, sitting on a blanket by the lake near base. She'd been nervous, twisting a strand of hair around her finger the way she did when emotions overwhelmed her. I love you, Marcus Reid, she'd said, her voice catching. And it terrifies me how much. He'd pulled her close, promising to never give her reason to fear loving him. He'd meant it with every cell in his body. Now he scrolled through his photo gallery, Sarah sending him off at deployment, her eyes red-rimmed but her smile brave. Their 5th anniversary, dancing in their kitchen to no music. Jake and him in Afghanistan, arms around each other's shoulders, dust-covered and exhausted but alive. The images blurred as Marcus's military training warred with his human heart. Intelligence analysts were taught to detach, to observe patterns and anomalies, to reconstruct timelines from fragments. He found himself doing exactly that, his mind calculating while his heart hemorrhaged. Sarah said 6 months. If true, that meant they started sleeping together in month 2 or 3 of his deployment. The Riverside Hotel sighting was 4 months ago. Jake's truck had been in his driveway multiple nights according to his home security app logs, which he'd checked sporadically from overseas to make sure the house was secure. His phone buzzed again. "Sarah, please come home. I made dinner. We need to talk face to face." The casual domesticity of it stunned him. Dinner. Like he'd just been at work, not discovering the foundation of his life was built on quicksand. Marcus stood and paced the small room, his reflection fragmenting in the bathroom mirror with each pass. 3 options crystallized: confront them both with rage, which they expected, pretend reconciliation was possible, which they hoped for, or something else entirely. His phone rang, Jake's name flashing on the screen. Marcus stared at it, remembering all the times that name had meant safety, brotherhood, trust. "Marcus, thank God," Jake's voice came through, strained with practiced concern. "Where are you, a man?" Sarah's worried sick. "Is she?" Marcus replied, his voice unnaturally calm. A pause. "Look, I know how this looks." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my best friend has been fucking my wife in my bed while I was dodging mortars in Afghanistan." The clinical vulgarity hung between them. Jake exhaled sharply. "It just happened, Marcus. We didn't plan it. Sarah was lonely, I was checking on her like you asked, and one night." "One night," Marcus repeated. "And then the next night. And the next. For 6 months. I still love you like a brother," Jake said, his voice dropping to the sincere register he used when emotion overwhelmed him, or when he was lying. "This doesn't have to destroy everything. People make mistakes. Marriages survive worse." Marcus felt something shift inside him, the final load-bearing wall of his former life giving way. "When did you start planning what you'd say when I found out?" Silence stretched between them. "That's what I thought," Marcus said finally. "Don't call again." He ended the call and turned his phone off. The silence in the motel room was absolute, interrupted only by the mechanical drone of the ancient air conditioner. Marcus lay back on the bed and closed his eyes, but the images waiting for him there were worse than the reality surrounding him. Sarah's face as she said Jake's name. Jake's dog tags hanging against her skin. The casual confidence they had in his bed, like they belonged there. His eyes snapped open. The ceiling had water stains in patterns that reminded him of the maps he studied overseas, territories and boundaries, rivers and borders. His life had new topography now, redrawn by betrayal. Everything familiar had become foreign. Marcus showered under water pressure too weak to wash away the images in his mind. He dressed mechanically, then drove to the closest liquor store. The bourbon burned going down, but the fire was preferable to the numbness. 1 glass. 2. He chased oblivion but found only sharper clarity. In the amber depths of his 3rd glass, Marcus acknowledged what he'd been avoiding. The hurt wasn't just the betrayal. It was the humiliation. The thought of his unit, his friends, watching him return proudly to a wife who had become a punchline. His phone powered on with a chime that sounded obscenely cheerful in the grim motel room. 17 missed calls. 29 text messages. And an email from Sarah with the subject line, "Please read this." Against his better judgment, Marcus opened it. "Marcus, I know you won't answer my calls, and I understand. What I did is unforgivable. But you deserve to know it wasn't about you. It was about me in my loneliness, my weakness. Jake was there, and I made a terrible mistake. But I never stopped loving you. Please come home so we can talk about this. I don't want to lose you. S." Marcus stared at the words, analyzing them like intercepted enemy communication. Her message was calculated to place blame on abstract concepts, loneliness, weakness, circumstances, rather than deliberate choices made repeatedly over months. What struck him most was what she didn't say. No acknowledgement of the premeditation their actions required. No mention of the lies told directly to his face during video calls. No explanation for why everyone seemed to know except him. His phone buzzed with another text, this one from his mother. They spoke rarely, the relationship strained since his father left, but she must have heard something. "Marcus, call me. Sarah's worried about you." So they'd called his mother, using his family as leverage. Marcus felt cold fury replace the hurt, a tactical clarity emerging from emotional chaos. A knock at the door startled him. He moved silently to the peephole, military training asserting itself. Jake stood outside, shoulders hunched against light rain, looking simultaneously determined and uncertain. Marcus opened the door but blocked the entrance. Jake looked worse than he had hours earlier, unshaven, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot. "You shouldn't be here," Marcus said. "I had to come," Jake replied. "Sarah's falling apart. She thinks you might hurt yourself." The calculated manipulation was so transparent Marcus almost laughed. "She thinks I'd give you both that satisfaction." Jake flinched. "That's not, we're genuinely concerned." Marcus repeated, the word bitter on his tongue. "There is no we, that includes you speaking for my wife." "Marcus, please. We were brothers once. Remember Kandahar? That night under fire when you pulled me to safety? You told me then we'd always have each other's backs." The memory hit Marcus like physical pain, the firefight, the smell of blood and gunpowder, Jake's leg shredded by shrapnel, carrying him through darkness to the extraction point. "I remembered," Marcus said quietly. "Every day overseas, I remembered." "When did you forget?" Jake's face crumpled. "I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know it was never about disrespecting you. Sarah and I—" "Stop talking," Marcus interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "If you say her name again, what happens next will make Kandahar look like a training exercise." Jake took a step back, recognition dawning in his eyes. This wasn't the Marcus he'd expected, the predictable betrayed husband, all rage and impotent threats. This was the intelligence officer who could dismantle enemy networks with methodical precision. Who could identify vulnerabilities and exploit them without emotion. "What are you going to do?" Jake asked, genuine fear coloring his words. Marcus studied his former friend's face, the man who'd stood beside him on his wedding day, who'd promised to protect what Marcus loved most, who'd shattered everything sacred between them. "I haven't decided yet," Marcus answered truthfully. "But when I do, you'll know." He closed the door quietly, the soft click more final than any slam could have been. Through the thin walls, he heard Jake's footsteps retreat, followed by the sound of his truck starting. Marcus returned to the bourbon, but no longer to numb the pain. Now he drank to toast the death of who he had been, the trusting husband, the loyal friend, the man who believed in promises. That man was gone. In his place stood someone colder, someone capable of calculating rather than just reacting. Someone who would ensure that actions had their proper consequences. His phone lit up with another message from Sarah. "Jake says he saw you. Please come home. I'm scared for you." Marcus didn't respond. Instead, he opened his laptop and began what intelligence training had taught him to do best: gather information, identify patterns, map connections, and formulate a strategy. The betrayal had blindsided him. What came next would be different. They had rewritten his past without his knowledge. He would now rewrite their future without their consent. For 2 days, Marcus existed in limbo. The motel room became his forward operating base, a place neither home nor away, a neutral territory to assess damage and plan next moves. Bourbon became both enemy and ally, dulling the pain while sharpening the rage. If you're feeling this story in your chest already, take a second to hit subscribe. Stories like these need witnesses, and I promise what comes next will shake you. The wedding album lay open on the bed, a minefield of memories. Marcus and Sarah cutting cake, feeding each other bites, laughing. Jake standing beside them, hand on Marcus's shoulder, his best man speech folded in his pocket. Marcus traced their faces with his fingertip, wondering if the seeds of betrayal were already there, invisible to his trusting eyes. His phone continued its relentless assault. Sarah, it's been 36 hours. Please just let me know you're safe. Jake, the unit's asking questions. What should I tell them? Sarah, I called your mother. I didn't know what else to do. Jake, brother, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but we need to talk man to man. The word brother felt like acid on his skin. Marcus hurled the phone across the room, watching it bounce harmlessly off the wall. Even in his rage, the soldier in him couldn't destroy a vital communication device. Tactical error. He retrieved it, powering it off. The silence that followed was both blessing and curse. That night, Marcus sat on the bathroom floor, service weapon in hand, turning it over and over. Not loaded, his training wouldn't allow that level of carelessness, but the weight was comforting. Familiar. His finger traced the trigger guard as memories assaulted him in vivid technicolor. Sarah wrapping her legs around him the night before deployment, whispering, "Come back to me. Promise you'll come back to me." Jake slipping him extra ammo during a particularly nasty firefight, saying, "Not letting you run dry on my watch, brother." The promises they'd made. The future they'd planned. The child they'd talked about having when he returned. All of it, lies. Or worse, truth that had curdled into something unrecognizable while he was away fighting for a country that suddenly felt less like home than the war zone he'd left. The gun was cold against his temple. One moment of weakness, one pull of the trigger, and the pain would stop. Sarah and Jake would have their freedom, purchased with his blood. Then something shifted. A memory surfaced, not of Sarah or Jake, but of a young Afghan girl he'd helped evacuate after her village was attacked. "You are strong," she'd told him in halting English. "Like mountains." Marcus set the gun down. He stood, splashed cold water on his face, and looked at himself in the mirror, really looked, for the first time since coming home. His eyes were bloodshot, stubble darkening his jaw, but behind the physical exhaustion was something else. Resolve. The face of a soldier who had survived worse than betrayal. They don't get to win, he told his reflection. Not like this. Before we continue with Marcus's next move, quick question, are you subscribed yet? If not, go ahead and fix that for me. Stories like this deserve to be heard, and there are many more to come. By morning, Marcus was sober, showered, and methodically reviewing evidence on his laptop. Intelligence training taking over. Email records. Text messages. Bank statements. Credit card bills. The discoveries came like body blows. Receipt from the Riverside Hotel, dated just 2 weeks after his deployment. Not 6 months ago as Sarah claimed. 8 months. They'd lied about the timeline. Joint account withdrawals, cash, untraceable, coinciding with dates Jake's truck appeared in his driveway. A charge for dinner at Giovanni's, where Marcus had proposed to Sarah, 2 months into his deployment. And most damning, a pregnancy test purchase on Sarah's credit card 3 months ago. Marcus froze, the implications cascading through him. Was she pregnant? With Jake's child? The thought made his stomach heave. His phone pinged with an email notification, his command requesting a check-in. He hadn't reported for duty since arriving stateside. Procedure required him to check in within 72 hours. Marcus drafted a brief response, citing a family emergency, requesting 2 weeks leave. Professional, detached, revealing nothing about the war zone he'd found at home. As he pressed send, another email arrived, from Sarah's sister Emma. "Marcus, I know what they did. Sarah told me it was complicated, but there's nothing complicated about betraying someone serving overseas. I'm disgusted and ashamed. Call me if you need anything. I mean it. An unexpected ally. Marcus stared at the message, recalibrating. Emma was an attorney at a prestigious Denver firm. She and Sarah had always been close, but apparently even blood had its limits when it came to betrayal. He called her. Thank God, Emma answered immediately. Are you okay? Stupid question, of course you're not. I've been better, Marcus admitted, the first honest words he'd spoken in days. Where are you? Sarah's telling everyone you've gone AWOL, that she's worried about your mental state. Jake's been over there constantly, playing the concerned friend. It's sickening. Marcus absorbed this information with growing coldness. They're setting a narrative. Exactly, Emma confirmed. Sarah filed for divorce this morning. She's claiming irreconcilable differences due to your military service creating emotional distance. She's already meeting with attorneys about the house, your benefits. Marcus closed his eyes. The tactical move surprised him, though it shouldn't have. Sarah was always 3 steps ahead, planning while others reacted. It was what he'd loved about her once. There's more, Emma continued, hesitation in her voice. Jake reached out to your command. Expressed concerns about your stability. Mentioned PTSD, suggested you might be having a breakdown. The betrayal expanded, metastasizing from personal to professional. They weren't just taking his marriage, they were threatening his career, his reputation, his future. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked, suspicion threading through him. Trust felt like a luxury he could no longer afford. Because it's wrong, Emma replied simply. I've watched Sarah change since you left. At first, I thought it was just deployment stress. Then Jake was around constantly, and she was different. Secretive. I confronted her last month after seeing them together at a restaurant. She swore it was nothing. That you knew they were close. Emma paused. I'm an attorney, Marcus. I recognize perjury when I hear it. By the way, if you're watching this and haven't subscribed yet, don't break my heart like that. Tap the button. You'll want to know how Marcus handles what's coming next. Marcus processed this information with the detachment of an intelligence officer assessing enemy movements. Sarah and Jake had the advantage of positioning, they were establishing the narrative first, portraying him as the unstable veteran, themselves as victims of circumstance. Classic manipulation strategy. What do you need? Emma asked, breaking his analysis. Evidence, Marcus replied without hesitation. Dates, times, photos if you have them. Anything proving timeline discrepancies. I can do better than that, Emma said. I have texts from Sarah going back to when you first deployed. She mentions Jake constantly. By month 2, she was already hiding things, cancelling our weekly dinners with vague excuses. I know now she was with him. A puzzle piece clicked into place. Did she ever mention the Riverside Hotel? Emma's intake of breath was answer enough. She told me they met there to discuss a surprise for your homecoming. I knew she was lying, but I couldn't prove it. I can, Marcus said, opening his laptop. Credit card statements don't lie. They talked for 30 minutes, building a timeline that made Marcus's stomach turn. The betrayal wasn't spontaneous weakness, as Sarah had claimed. It was calculated, consistent, and had begun before he even left American soil. What are you going to do? Emma asked finally. Marcus stared at the wall, seeing not the peeling motel paint but the complex network of lies and manipulation spreading before him. In Afghanistan, he'd mapped terrorist networks, identifying key nodes, communication channels, vulnerabilities. He saw Sarah and Jake's betrayal with the same analytical precision. First, documentation. Everything gets recorded, verified, time-stamped. Second, counter-narrative, I need to protect my professional standing. Third. He paused, the strategy forming as he spoke. I need to understand their endgame. The house, Emma said immediately. Sarah's always loved that house. And your military benefits, she's mentioned several times how they extend to former spouses in certain circumstances. Marcus nodded, though Emma couldn't see him. Assets and reputation. Classic targets. Marcus, Emma's voice softened. What they're doing is despicable, but please don't. She trailed off. Don't what? Hurt them? Become the unstable veteran they're painting me as. The question wasn't accusatory, it was genuine. Yes, Emma admitted. It would only prove their narrative. Marcus looked at his service weapon, now secured in its lockbox. The moment of weakness on the bathroom floor seemed distant now, replaced by cold, tactical clarity. I'm not going to hurt them, Emma. I'm going to dismantle them. After they hung up, Marcus created a secure cloud folder and began uploading everything: bank statements, credit card bills, text messages, emails. He wrote a detailed timeline, noting discrepancies between Sarah's claimed 6 months and the evidence suggesting 8 or more. Before leaving the motel, Marcus did one more thing. He wrote 2 letters, one to his commanding officer explaining the situation professionally, one to his mother telling her the truth before Sarah's version reached her. He would mail them personally, leaving no electronic trail. As he packed his few belongings, his phone lit up with another text from Jake. Command says you requested emergency leave. They're asking questions I can't answer. This silence isn't helping anyone, especially you. Let me help you, brother. Like always. The manipulative familiarity in those words crystallized Marcus's resolve. Jake wasn't his brother. Sarah wasn't his wife, not in any way that mattered. They were opponents in a conflict he hadn't chosen but would now navigate with every skill his military career had taught him. He checked out of the motel, paid cash for 2 weeks in advance at another across town where neither of them would think to look, and bought a prepaid phone. Operational security. Never let the enemy know your position or your next move. Marcus Reid, husband, friend, trusting soul, had died in that bedroom doorway 2 days ago. In his place stood a man they wouldn't recognize, wouldn't anticipate, and definitely wouldn't defeat. Settle in, get comfortable, and if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that. You're safe here. What Marcus does next will show you exactly why this story needed to be told. 3 days into his tactical retreat, Marcus sat in a coffee shop 2 towns over, laptop open, systematically building his defense. The barista had stopped asking if he wanted refills, instead silently replacing his cup whenever it emptied. The rhythmic clicking of his keyboard provided the soundtrack to his methodical documentation. His new prepaid phone buzzed. Emma. We need to meet. I have something you should see in person. They arranged to meet at a diner off the highway, neutral territory where Sarah and Jake wouldn't accidentally spot them. Marcus arrived early, selecting a booth with clear sightlines to all entrances, old habits from deployment that now served a different kind of survival. Emma slid into the booth 40 minutes later, her attorney's briefcase a shield between them. Always professional, even in crisis. Her resemblance to Sarah was striking yet incomplete, same honey blonde hair, but Emma's eyes held a sharpness Sarah's dreamy gaze lacked. You look like hell, she said by way of greeting. Appropriate, considering. Marcus pushed a mug of coffee toward her. Before we continue with this crucial meeting, if you're new here, hi love. I'm glad you made it. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss stories that touch the heart. This one's about to get even deeper. Emma opened her briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. I got access to Sarah's medical records. Marcus raised an eyebrow. How? I'm still listed as her emergency contact. Don't look at me like that, I know it's ethically questionable, but what they're doing to you is worse. She slid the folder across the table. Marcus opened it, his intelligence training allowing him to scan and absorb information rapidly. Blood test results. Hormone levels. Confirmation of pregnancy, approximately 11 weeks. The implications hit him with physical force. 11 weeks. He'd been gone 18 months. The child couldn't possibly be his. She's pregnant, he said flatly, the words tasting like ash. Emma nodded. She doesn't know I know. She hasn't told anyone yet, not even Jake, I think. Marcus closed the folder, his mind calculating timelines. Sarah's sudden push for divorce made more sense now. She needed legal separation before the pregnancy became visible. There's more, Emma said, her voice dropping. This is the part one couldn't tell you over the phone. She pulled out her personal phone, unlocked it, and slid it across the table. Text messages from Sarah, dated 3 weeks before Marcus's deployment. Jake came by again to help with the leaky faucet. He's so different from Marcus, actually listens when I talk. Don't judge me, but I'm thinking about him more than I should. It's just nice to feel seen again. We had lunch today. Just to talk about how I'll cope with the deployment. Marcus would be happy he's checking on me, right? Marcus scrolled through months of messages, the progression clear, emotional affair evolving into physical betrayal, not after he deployed but before. Their entire tearful goodbye had been theater. While he was preparing to defend his country, they were planning their deception. When did you suspect? Marcus asked, his voice unnaturally calm. About 3 months after you left. Sarah cancelled our weekly dinner for times in a row. When I surprised her at home, Jake's truck was there. She claimed he was fixing things around the house. Emma's face hardened. At 10 p.m. Without tools. Marcus nodded, processing. Why are you helping me? She's your sister. Emma met his gaze directly. My father left when Sarah was 12 and I was 14. He had an affair with our mother's best friend, someone who sat at our dinner table for years. I watched what it did to our mother. She paused. I never thought Sarah would become the person who inflicts that kind of pain. The waitress refilled their coffees, eyeing their intense conversation with professional disinterest. Have you heard from your command? Emma asked after the waitress left. My CO called yesterday. Jake apparently expressed a concern that I might be experiencing PTSD symptoms, becoming unstable. Suggested I might need psychiatric evaluation before returning to duty. Emma's expression darkened. They're not just trying to justify the affair. They're trying to destroy your career. And take everything else in the process, Marcus added. If I'm labeled unstable, Sarah gets the house, full benefits as the wronged spouse, and a clean narrative for their relationship. They found each other while supporting the troubled veteran. The calculated cruelty stole Marcus's breath. These were the people he'd trusted most in the world, not just betraying him, but systematically dismantling everything he'd built. I've started documenting the pregnancy timeline, Emma said. If you can prove you were deployed without leave during the conception window, it definitively establishes the affair. Marcus nodded, tactical planning overtaking emotional response. I need to move fast. If she files the divorce petition claiming irreconcilable differences before I can file with evidence of adultery, it changes the legal landscape. I can help with that, Emma said, then hesitated. But there's something else you should know. She pulled out one final piece of evidence, a photo on her phone. Jake's military file, open on someone's desk. Emma had clearly taken the picture surreptitiously. How did you get this? Marcus asked, intelligence officer instincts flaring. I dated a JAG officer last year. Still have friends at the office. She pointed to a notation in the file. This isn't Jake's first affair with a deployed soldier's wife. There was an incident 3 years ago at Fort Bragg. It was handled quietly. The husband was transferred after making unfounded accusations. Marcus stared at the image, a final piece clicking into place. Jake wasn't an opportunist who succumbed to temptation. He was a predator with a pattern, selecting vulnerable targets, isolating them, establishing trust, and waiting for the right moment. And Sarah wasn't just a lonely wife seeking comfort. She was a willing conspirator who had chosen Jake before Marcus even left, perhaps drawn to the excitement of forbidden connection, the thrill of secret meetings. They deserve each other, Marcus said quietly. Before I tell you what Marcus did next with this bombshell information, can I ask a tiny favor? Hit that subscribe button. It means more than you know, and it helps stories like this reach the people who need to hear them. Emma reached across the table, her hand covering his briefly. What's your next move? Marcus looked out the diner window, strategic options unfolding in his mind with military precision. They're expecting me to react emotionally, to become the stereotype of the betrayed husband. Angry, volatile, destructive. And what will you do instead? Emma asked. Nothing they expect, Marcus replied. His voice had changed, the raw pain replaced by something cooler, more controlled. First, I need to protect my professional standing. I have a meeting with my commanding officer tomorrow, full disclosure of the situation, documentation of Jake's false statements, evidence timeline. Emma nodded. Smart. What about the divorce? I'll file first, with evidence of adultery. In this state, that changes everything, asset division, support obligations, even Sarah's claim to my military benefits. And the pregnancy. Marcus's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes, a ghost of the future he'd once imagined, now forever altered. DNA testing will be part of the divorce proceedings. The timing will make it clear the child isn't mine. He paused. I don't want their child harmed by this. The baby is innocent. Emma studied him, something like respect crossing her features. Most men in your position wouldn't think that way. I'm not most men, Marcus replied simply. As they prepared to leave, Emma hesitated. They're hosting a dinner party tonight. Jake's commanding officer and his wife will be there. They're introducing Jake as Sarah's new boyfriend, claiming you two separated months ago, before the relationship started. The calculated public relations campaign stunned Marcus with its efficiency. They weren't just rewriting his marriage's end, they were fabricating its entire final chapter. How do you know this? He asked. Sarah invited me. She thinks I'm on her side. Emma's expression hardened. I told her I had a work emergency. Marcus absorbed this information, adjusting his tactical approach. Do you have access to the house when they're out? I have a key. Sarah never asked for it back after your deployment. Emma raised an eyebrow. Why? I need something from my office. Documentation that never made it to the cloud. Understanding dawned in Emma's eyes. You're going in tonight while they're hosting the dinner. Marcus nodded once. Operational security. Sometimes you have to enter hostile territory to secure critical intelligence. As they parted ways, Marcus felt a shift within himself, the final transformation from betrayed husband to strategic operator. Sarah and Jake believed they were writing the ending to this story. They had no idea it was just beginning. The meeting with Colonel Hayes began promisingly. Marcus arrived at headquarters in full dress uniform, back straight, eyes clear, the picture of military professionalism despite the chaos consuming his personal life. He'd prepared meticulously, organizing evidence into a chronological report that any intelligence officer would approve. Staff Sergeant Reid, Hayes gestured to the chair across from his desk. I understand you've had some domestic complications since your return. Marcus nodded once. Yes, sir. I believe Lieutenant Morrison has spoken with you about the situation. He has expressed concern about your mental state. Hayes studied him carefully. Says you discovered your wife's relationship with him and reacted erratically. Disappeared for days. Possibly experiencing post-combat stress. With respect, sir, that characterization is inaccurate. Marcus placed a folder on the desk. I've prepared a timeline of events with supporting documentation. Hayes opened the folder, skimming the contents with practiced efficiency. His expression remained neutral, but a slight tightening around his eyes betrayed his reaction to certain details. This is thorough, Reid. He closed the folder. However, Lieutenant Morrison has already filed an official statement. Your wife has corroborated his account. Marcus felt the first tremor of alarm. So, Mrs. Reid contacted Family Services yesterday. She reported threatening behavior, claimed she fears for her safety. Hayes's voice softened slightly. She's filed for a temporary restraining order. The words hit Marcus with physical force. A restraining order. The perfect tactical move. It made him look unstable, reinforced their narrative, and legally barred him from his own home. From accessing additional evidence. From confronting their lies directly. That's false, sir. I've had minimal contact with either of them since discovery. I believe you, Reid. Hayes leaned forward. But my belief isn't what matters here. The system has protocols. With a TRO in place and concerns about combat stress, you'll need to undergo psychological evaluation before returning to full duty. The noose tightened. Every action Marcus had taken to protect himself was being weaponized against him. His careful retreat interpreted as erratic behavior. His intelligence gathering as obsessive stalking. His silence as emotional instability. And hey, while you're here, if you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love to have you as part of the family. Go on, I'll wait. Because what happens next in Marcus's story is something everyone needs to witness. Additionally, Hayes continued, Lieutenant Morrison is being considered for promotion to captain. His record is exemplary. The allegations in this report. He tapped the folder. They are serious. Career-ending, potentially. Without irrefutable evidence, pursuing them could be seen as retaliatory. Marcus understood the subtext perfectly. Jake had positioned himself as the concerned friend, the responsible officer worried about a combat-affected comrade. Any move against him would appear as bitter vengeance from a troubled veteran. I understand, sir, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. What are my orders? Report to Dr. Winters in Behavioral Health tomorrow at 0800. Surrender your down to the Army until evaluation is complete. Consider taking additional leave. Hayes's expression was almost sympathetic. And Reid? Handle the personal situation through proper legal channels. The military has no place in marital disputes. Marcus left headquarters with his world contracting around him. His carefully constructed countermove had failed. Worse, it had reinforced the narrative Sarah and Jake were creating. Outside, rain began falling, gentle at first, then with increasing intensity. Marcus stood in it, face tilted upward, letting the water mask the burning in his eyes. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Need to meet urgently. Bad news. The coffee shop was nearly empty, the rain keeping casual customers away. Emma's normally immaculate appearance showed signs of strain, hair pulled back hastily, the faintest smudge of mascara beneath one eye. The firm dropped me, she said without preamble. Senior partner called me in this morning. Said Sarah contacted them directly, cited conflict of interest with me representing you against a family member. Marcus absorbed this blow in silence. Another avenue closed. Another ally neutralized. That's not all, Emma continued, voice dropping. She's liquidating your joint accounts. I tried to file an injunction to freeze assets until the divorce proceedings, but without formal representation. She's taking everything, Marcus finished flatly. Not legally. But by the time the courts sort it out, the money will be gone. Emma pushed a coffee toward him. I've reached out to some colleagues who might take the case pro bono, but with the restraining order complicating things. Marcus stared into the black coffee, seeing his reflection fragmented on its surface. They're winning. For now, Emma insisted. But the truth? The truth doesn't matter, Marcus interrupted, a new bitterness in his voice. They're controlling the narrative. Creating legal obstacles. Isolating me professionally and personally. He showed her his military orders, psychological evaluation, temporary duty restriction, surrender of his weapon. The systematic dismantling of his life was proceeding with tactical precision. Marcus. Emma began. Don't. He held up a hand. I don't need sympathy. I need solutions. But as the days passed, solutions seemed increasingly elusive. The restraining order was approved, Marcus officially barred from coming within 500 feet of his own home. Sarah's divorce petition moved forward, her attorney painting Marcus as an emotionally distant soldier whose overseas service had made him a stranger to his wife. Jake received his promotion to captain, the investigation into his conduct with a deployed soldier's spouse deemed unsubstantiated. Several of Marcus's fellow soldiers, hearing only the official narrative, began treating him with the awkward caution reserved for someone unraveling. If you're watching this and feeling the injustice burning in your chest, please hit subscribe. This story needs witnesses, and what happens next will show you exactly why. Marcus moved into an extended stay hotel, the anonymous beige walls closing in a little more each day. Emma's contacts in the legal community were hesitant to take on a case complicated by military jurisdiction, restraining orders, and pregnancy. His mother called daily, her concern morphing into poorly disguised worry about his mental state. "Maybe you should come home for a while," she suggested carefully. "Just until things settle." Home. The word had lost all meaning. His house contained his possessions but belonged to strangers now. His marriage had been a carefully constructed illusion. His closest friendship, a calculated betrayal. One night, Marcus found himself parked outside a bar frequented by military personnel. Through the window, he saw Jake, now Captain Morrison, surrounded by colleagues, laughing, accepting congratulatory slaps on the back. The newly promoted officer. The concerned friend. The man who had destroyed Marcus's life and emerged unscathed. For a dangerous moment, Marcus considered confrontation, walking in, exposing Jake's betrayal publicly, forcing the truth into the light. But he recognized the trap. In Jake's carefully constructed narrative, such a confrontation would only confirm Marcus as unstable, threatening, exactly as they had portrayed him. Instead, he drove back to his hotel room and opened his laptop. The evidence he'd gathered stared back at him, irrefutable but useless without the right channel for justice. The system that had governed his entire adult life, the military with its codes of honor, the legal framework with its promise of fairness, had failed him completely. His phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. "Heard what happened with Sarah. Same thing happened to me with Jake 3 years ago. No one believed me either. If you need to talk." The message was signed with initials that matched the incident in Jake's file, the previous husband who had made unfounded accusations. Another victim of the same predator. Another man whose life had been dismantled. Marcus didn't respond. Instead, he pulled out his service pistol, returned to him after the initial psychological evaluation found him temporarily stressed but not immediately concerning. He placed it on the hotel desk, staring at it as the hours crawled past midnight. His father had walked out when Marcus was 7, leaving nothing but a brief note, not cut out for family life. His entire childhood had been shaped by that abandonment, the constant fear that he too was unlovable, unworthy of loyalty. Sarah and Jake had confirmed his deepest fear. If the two people who knew him best could discard him so easily, perhaps there was something fundamentally wrong with him. Perhaps he deserved this. Marcus picked up the gun, feeling its weight, the instrument he had trusted to protect his life in combat now offering a different kind of escape. He placed the barrel against his temple, finger alongside the trigger guard. One movement would end the pain, the humiliation, the systematic destruction of everything he'd built. On the desk, photographs spread in silent testament to what he'd lost: his wedding day, his graduation from intelligence training, Jake and him in Afghanistan, arms around each other's shoulders, brothers in all but blood. With trembling hands, Marcus set the gun down and instead pulled a notepad toward him. He began writing goodbye letters. To his mother. To his commanding officer. To the few friends who had stood by him. He wrote until dawn broke, emptying his pain onto paper, creating a final record of truth in a world that had accepted convenient lies. When the last letter was sealed, Marcus looked at the gun again. And made his decision. Dawn broke over the anonymous hotel room, pale light illuminating Marcus's service weapon and the row of sealed envelopes beside it. The decision he'd reached after hours of darkness wasn't what he'd expected. He wouldn't give them this final victory. With hands steadier than they'd been in days, Marcus returned the pistol to its lockbox. Then he picked up his phone and dialed a number he'd memorized during deployment briefings but never thought he'd use, the Veterans Crisis Line. "This is Jason," answered a calm male voice. "I'm here to listen." The words caught in Marcus's throat. Admitting vulnerability went against everything his military training had instilled. But in that moment, with the sealed letters beside him like tombstones, pride seemed a luxury he could no longer afford. "My name is Marcus," he finally said. "I'm a staff sergeant. I just got back from Afghanistan and I almost did something permanent tonight." "I'm glad you called instead, Marcus," Jason replied. That took real courage. For the next hour, Marcus talked about the deployment, the homecoming, the betrayal, the systematic dismantling of his life by the two people he'd trusted most. Jason listened without judgment, asking questions that helped Marcus articulate the tornado of pain, rage, and humiliation consuming him. "What you're experiencing isn't just heartbreak," Jason said finally. "It's moral injury, wound to your core beliefs about loyalty, trust, and justice. Combined with the stress of deployment and reintegration, it's a perfect storm." The clinical framing provided Marcus something his intelligence training respected: analysis, framework, context. "I keep thinking if I'd been different, less absent, more attentive before deployment, maybe this wouldn't have happened," Marcus admitted. "That's a common response to betrayal," Jason countered. "But from what you've described, their behavior began before you deployed. Their choices aren't a reflection of your worth." The simple truth pierced the darkness that had enveloped Marcus for weeks. Their betrayal wasn't his failure. Their lies weren't his burden to carry. "I'd like to connect you with Dr. Elaine Winters at the VA," Jason continued. "She specializes in betrayal trauma and moral injury. Would you be willing to see her?" Marcus glanced at the sealed letters, the physical manifestation of how close he'd come to surrender. "Yes," he said simply. "By the way, if you're feeling this story in your chest, please take a second to subscribe to my channel. Your support helps me share stories like Marcus's that need to be told. Hit that button, I promise what comes next will be worth it." 3 days later, Marcus sat across from Dr. Winters, a woman whose calm demeanor reminded him of the best intelligence officers he'd served with: observant, analytical, and unexpectedly direct. "The military trains us to view surrender as failure," she noted after he'd shared his story. "But sometimes the most strategic move is tactical retreat, not to abandon the field, but to regroup and approach from a different position." "They've outmaneuvered me at every turn," Marcus admitted. The restraining order, the asset liquidation, the professional isolation. "Because they're fighting dirty while you've been trying to fight honorably," Dr. Winters replied. "That's not weakness, Marcus. It speaks to your character." "My character isn't helping me much right now. Actually, it's your greatest asset." She leaned forward. "The thing about people who betray others so completely? They expect you to become like them, bitter, vindictive, destructive. When you don't, it confuses them, creates openings." For the first time since his homecoming, Marcus felt something shift inside him, not hope exactly, but a reawakening of his strategic mind. He'd been approaching this like a direct combat engagement. Perhaps it required something more sophisticated. "Stop trying to win sympathy or prove your innocence to others," Dr. Winters advised. "Focus on rebuilding systematically. The truth has power, but only when leveraged correctly and with patience." As Marcus left her office, his phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "I quit the firm. Need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Park at 2. The park was nearly deserted, autumn leaves swirling around the benches. Emma sat wrapped in a camel-colored coat, her expression resolute despite the professional sacrifice her message had revealed. "You quit your job?" Marcus asked as he sat beside her. "The senior partners gave me an ultimatum: drop all involvement in your case or face career consequences." Her chin lifted slightly. "I chose option 3, resignation." "Emma, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did." She cut him off. "What Sarah and Jake are doing isn't just wrong, it's calculated cruelty. I won't be part of a firm that prioritizes connections over justice. The loyalty stunned him, so unexpected after such profound betrayal that Marcus struggled to accept it as genuine. I've been in contact with Major Daniels from JG, Emma continued. He's agreed to review your case pro bono. With military oversight, we can challenge the restraining order on grounds that it was obtained under false pretenses. Why would he help? Marcus asked, suspicion now his default setting. Because Jake Morrison has made enemies. Apparently, his rapid promotion has raised eyebrows. Daniels has been looking for leverage. A tactical alliance. Marcus nodded, understanding this framework better than one based on altruism. Before we continue, quick question, are you subscribed to my channel yet? If not, go ahead and fix that for me. Stories like Marcus's deserve witnesses, and there are many more to come. By the following week, the counteroffensive had begun. Major Daniels filed a motion challenging the restraining order, presenting evidence that Sarah's claims of threatening behavior were unsupported by any documentation, witness statements, or communication records. The judge, the retired colonel herself, reviewed the evidence with military precision and dissolved the order, citing insufficient grounds and questionable motivation. With this first victory came intelligence that shifted the strategic landscape entirely. Emma's contacts revealed that Jake Morrison was being considered for Special Forces training, an elite assignment that required extensive background investigation and impeccable character references. Special Forces candidates undergo extreme vetting, Marcus explained to Emma as they reviewed the development. Adultery with a deployed service member's spouse is an explicit violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. If documented officially, it would disqualify him immediately. But your previous report was dismissed, Emma noted. Because it was perceived as retaliatory, Marcus replied, his intelligence training now fully engaged. The key is timing and documentation. Not accusation but evidence. Not emotion but fact. For the first time since his homecoming, Marcus felt the fog of betrayal lifting, replaced by the clear-eyed focus that had made him an exceptional intelligence officer. The path forward wasn't about destroying Sarah and Jake, it was about ensuring the truth was irrefutable. With Emma's legal expertise and Daniel's military connections, Marcus systematically assembled a comprehensive dossier, financial records showing joint funds used for hotel meetings during his deployment, text messages obtained via subpoena revealing the timeline of deception, witness statements from fellow soldiers who had seen Sarah and Jake together while Marcus was overseas, medical records confirming pregnancy timing that proved infidelity. Most damning was the statement from Jake's previous victim, the soldier whose accusations had been dismissed as unfounded years earlier. He provided documentation showing a pattern of behavior, Jake befriending deployed soldiers, offering to look after their wives, and systematically pursuing those relationships. This isn't just about your case anymore, Major Daniels observed as they reviewed the evidence. This is about a predatory pattern that the military has an obligation to address. As the legal strategy took shape, Marcus found something unexpected happening. The crushing weight of betrayal began to lift, not because the pain had diminished, but because his response to it had transformed. He was no longer defined by what had been done to him, but by how he chose to address it. Emma played a crucial role in this transformation. Her unwavering support, professional yet personal, strong but never pitying, created space for Marcus to rebuild. They spent long evenings strategizing, their partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose. She saw him not as a victim but as a strategist, not as damaged but as determined. You know, she said one evening as they finished reviewing court filings, when Sarah first told me about Jake, she tried to justify it. Said you had grown distant before deployment, that you were emotionally unavailable. Marcus looked up from the documents. Was I? Emma shook her head. I saw how you were with her. Present. Attentive. The problem wasn't that you were unavailable. It was that you saw her clearly, the real her, and she couldn't bear that scrutiny. The insight landed with surprising force. Perhaps Sarah had chosen Jake not despite his betrayal but because of it, his willingness to deceive aligned with something in her that Marcus had never fully recognized. As their legal strategy solidified, Marcus felt something he had thought permanently lost: hope. Not for reconciliation, that bridge was thoroughly burned, but for justice, for vindication, for the chance to rebuild a life that was truly his own. The question was no longer if he would act, but how far he would go. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, now's the time. What Marcus does next with all this evidence will show you exactly why some stories need to be told. Hit subscribe, I promise you won't want to miss what's coming. The courtroom was silent except for the rhythmic tapping of Judge Harmon's pen against his desk as he reviewed the final pieces of evidence. Marcus sat with perfect military posture, Emma beside him as co-counsel with Major Daniels. Across the aisle, Sarah looked smaller than Marcus remembered, her attorney whispering urgently in her ear. Your Honor, Emma addressed the court, the evidence clearly establishes adultery during Staff Sergeant Reid's deployment, premeditated deception, and misuse of joint marital assets to conduct this affair. The judge, a Vietnam veteran himself, reviewed the hotel receipts, bank statements, and text message transcripts with narrowed eyes. His gaze lingered on the medical records confirming Sarah's pregnancy timeline. Mrs. Reid, Judge Harmon finally spoke, these documents indicate conception occurred approximately 3 months ago, while Staff Sergeant Reid was verifiably deployed overseas without leave or visitation. Do you dispute this medical assessment? Sarah's face paled. She whispered something to her attorney, who shook his head slightly. No, Your Honor, she finally answered, voice barely audible. In light of the overwhelming evidence of adultery with clear timeline documentation, the judge continued, this court finds in favor of the petitioner. The divorce is granted on grounds of adultery. He continued with the asset division, his tone growing increasingly stern. Given the circumstances and evidence of marital funds being used to conduct the affair, the court awards the marital home to Staff Sergeant Reid. Mrs. Reid will receive no spousal support and must reimburse the joint account for documented misused funds totaling $6,743. The gavel fell with finality. Sarah remained seated as Marcus and his legal team gathered their documents. When he finally looked at her directly, he saw not the woman he had loved but a stranger, one who had calculated his destruction and failed. Outside the courtroom, Emma squeezed his arm. Phase 1 complete. If you're feeling the satisfaction of this moment, take a second to hit subscribe. Justice is coming for Jake too, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Marcus could have moved immediately against Jake professionally, but intelligence training had taught him the value of strategic patience. He waited, calculating, observing, allowing Jake to reach the pinnacle before executing the next phase. 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Jake Morrison received the coveted Special Forces selection notice. His promotion to captain already secured, this assignment represented the elite trajectory he had always wanted. Military social media channels buzzed with congratulations. His commanding officers mentioned his exemplary character and unwavering commitment to military values. The night Jake accepted the position with a formal ceremony, Marcus submitted his comprehensive dossier to the Military Justice Division, the Inspector General's office, and Jake's chain of command simultaneously. The documentation was irrefutable: adultery with a deployed service member's spouse, Article 134 violation, misuse of position, conduct unbecoming an officer, and the pattern established with previous cases. 3 days later, Jake was called to his commander's office. By evening, he was under investigation. By the following week, he faced an Article 32 hearing, the military equivalent of a grand jury proceeding. Morrison thought his previous incident was buried, Major Daniels explained to Marcus after the hearing. But your evidence forced a deeper look. They found 2 other cases, both deployed soldiers' wives, both hushed up through transfers or separations. The military justice system, once manipulated to protect Jake, now moved with ruthless efficiency. The evidence Marcus had meticulously gathered left no room for dismissal or minimization. Jake's defense, that the relationships were consensual, only underscored his willful violation of military code. The verdict came swiftly: dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of all benefits, reduction to lowest enlisted grade, and a permanent record that would follow him into civilian life. Before we continue, if you're watching this and haven't subscribed yet, don't break my heart like that. Tap that button. This story of justice deserves your support, and there are many more waiting to be told. With the legal and professional phases complete, Marcus addressed the social dimension with the same strategic precision. He had maintained complete silence throughout the proceedings, allowing Sarah and Jake to control the narrative among their friends. Now, with court documents officially in the public record, he composed a single email to their mutual social circle. No accusations. No emotional appeals. Just a timeline with verifiable facts, court findings, and official military actions. The email ended with one line: "I have no interest in ongoing discussion about these matters, but I believe friends deserve to know the truth." The social implosion was nuclear. Friends who had accepted Sarah and Jake's version called to apologize. Sarah's family, who had initially believed her claims about Marcus's emotional unavailability, reached out expressing shock and dismay at her deception. Jake's military colleagues, many of whom had celebrated his promotion, now distanced themselves completely. Most revealing was the impact on Sarah and Jake's relationship. Without the secrecy that had defined it, without the shared project of destroying Marcus, the foundation crumbled. Reports filtered back through mutual friends, savage arguments, public accusations, bitter recriminations. "She's blaming him for not protecting her from consequences," Emma reported after hearing from Sarah's cousin. "He's resentful that she'd cost him everything. They're tearing each other apart." Marcus absorbed this information without satisfaction or triumph. The relationship built on betrayal had collapsed under scrutiny, not because of his actions, but because of its inherent corruption. The final phase addressed the property, the house Marcus and Sarah had chosen together, where they had planned to raise children, where he had discovered their betrayal. "You could sell it," Emma suggested as they reviewed the final divorce decree. "Fresh start." Marcus nodded. "Already listed it. I have a buyer." The buyer was Ryan Kelly, the friend who had introduced Marcus to Sarah 7 years earlier. Ryan had apologized profusely for not warning Marcus about what he'd seen while Marcus was deployed. "I didn't know how to tell you," Ryan had admitted. "I saw them together once, but Sarah swore it was innocent. I wanted to believe her." "You're buying my house as penance?" Marcus had asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'm buying it because it's a good house in a neighborhood where my kids can walk to school," Ryan had replied. "But yes, the guilt discount doesn't hurt." The sale closed quickly. Marcus took the proceeds and funded a fresh start, a smaller place closer to base, investment in his future, and a donation to a veteran support organization specializing in reintegration counseling. If this story of calculated justice resonates with you, please subscribe to my channel right now. What happens next shows the true power of rising above betrayal, and I don't want you to miss it. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. Marcus was leaving a coffee shop near his new apartment when he saw Jake waiting beside his truck. Discharged, unemployed, and visibly diminished, the man who had been his brother in all but blood stood with shoulders hunched against the autumn chill. "5 minutes," Jake said, his voice lacking the confidence that had once characterized it. "That's all I'm asking." Marcus assessed the situation with combat-honed instincts. No threat, just desperation. 2 minutes, he replied, checking his watch deliberately. "I'm sorry, man," Jake began, the words tumbling out. "I was messed up. The combat, the PTSD, it wasn't about you." Marcus cut him off cold. "Don't you dare blame your betrayal on service. We both served. I didn't betray you." His voice remained level, controlled. "You taught me something valuable though." "What?" Jake asked, genuine confusion crossing his face. "That some people will sacrifice everything, honor, friendship, integrity, for temporary pleasure. And those people always end up alone." Marcus looked at Jake directly, seeing not an enemy but someone profoundly diminished. "Look at yourself, Jake. Look at what you've become. I didn't destroy you. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone else saw it." Jake started to respond, but Marcus was already walking away. The conversation finished on his terms. There was nothing more to say, no forgiveness to offer, no closure to seek. The chapter was ended. As Marcus drove away, he felt no triumph, no vindication, not even anger. He felt something infinitely more valuable: freedom. The weight of betrayal had lifted. Justice had been served, but more importantly, he had reclaimed his truth. He was no longer defined by what had been done to him, but by how he had responded to it. And that made all the difference. 2 years later, the Veterans Community Center bustled with activity as Marcus finished his presentation on reintegration challenges. The weekly support group had grown from 5 hesitant participants to over 30 regular attendees, men and women working through the complex transition from military to civilian life. "Remember," Marcus concluded, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had always been his hallmark, "homecoming isn't a single moment. It's a process. And none of us have to navigate it alone." As the group dispersed, several members lingered to speak with him privately: a recently returned Marine struggling with his marriage, an Army specialist battling insomnia, a Navy corpsman questioning her purpose in civilian life. Marcus gave each his full attention, offering not platitudes but practical strategies grounded in his own hard-won wisdom. Dr. Winters watched from the doorway, a small smile playing on her lips. When the last veteran departed, she approached. "2 years ago, you were sitting where they are," she observed. "Now look at you." Marcus shrugged, uncomfortable with praise despite having learned to accept it. "I just share what worked for me." "Which is exactly what makes you effective." She glanced at her watch. "Isn't Emma expecting you?" "Don't keep her waiting on my account." If you're feeling inspired by Marcus's transformation, please hit that subscribe button right now. Stories of redemption like this one need to be shared, and I've got plenty more waiting for you. Outside, autumn painted the world in amber and gold, fallen leaves crunching beneath Marcus's boots as he walked to his car. He drove with windows down, savoring the crisp air that held no trace of desert sand. His phone rang through the car's speaker, Emma's name appearing on the dashboard display. "Running late?" she asked without preamble. "Finishing up group," he replied, smiling at her familiar directness. 20 minutes. "Perfect. I picked up dinner from that Thai place you like." Such a simple exchange, yet it represented everything Marcus had once believed lost forever: normalcy, consideration, trust. The relationship with Emma had evolved gradually, neither of them rushing what both recognized as potentially fragile. Their first coffee meeting after the final confrontation with Jake had been purely practical, discussing the house sale, tying up legal loose ends. The second meeting drifted toward personal territory, her new solo practice specializing in military family law, his counseling work with returning veterans. By the third meeting, something unacknowledged had shifted between them. Not romance yet, but possibility. Trust cautiously extended, carefully honored. 6 months passed before Marcus asked her to dinner officially. Another 3 before their first kiss, standing on her porch, the moment suspended between hesitation and certainty until Emma had laughed softly and said, "Some battles don't require tactics, Staff Sergeant." Now, 2 years after his world imploded, Marcus pulled into the driveway of the craftsman bungalow they had purchased together 6 months earlier. Emma waited on the porch, case files set aside as she watched his arrival. Her smile still caught him by surprise sometimes, not because of its resemblance to Sarah's, which had initially been disconcerting, but because of how differently it affected him. Where Sarah's smile had made him feel needed, Emma's made him feel seen. "How was group?" she asked as he joined her on the porch. "Productive. Torres is finally sleeping through the night. Mitchell had his first job interview." He sat beside her, shoulder touching hers comfortably. "Callahan asked about you. Says your work on his custody case is a badass lawyering." Emma laughed. "I'll take that as a professional compliment." Before we continue with Marcus and Emma's evening, if you're new here, hi love. I'm glad you made it. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss stories that touch the heart. And trust me, the conclusion to this one is worth it. Inside, over dinner, Emma slid an envelope across the table. "It came today." Marcus recognized the official seal immediately. He opened it carefully, reading the contents twice before meeting her eyes. The adoption agency approved our application, he said, voice steady despite the emotion behind it. We're on the list. Emma reached for his hand. They were particularly impressed by your counseling work. Said your experience would be valuable for children coming from difficult backgrounds. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus that his deepest wound had become his greatest strength. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed him had ultimately transformed him into someone capable of guiding others through darkness. You okay? Emma asked, reading his expression with the attentiveness that had become their foundation. Better than okay, he replied honestly. Just thinking about how differently things could have ended. After dinner, they walked downtown for coffee, a ritual that had become sacred in its ordinariness. The local cafe buzzed with evening customers, students from the nearby college, couples enjoying the pleasant weather. As they waited in line, Marcus's attention was caught by a familiar figure at a corner table, Sarah. She looked different, thinner, her once vibrant hair dull, dark circles beneath her eyes visible even from a distance. She wore the uniform of the department store where Emma had mentioned she now worked, her name tag partially hidden by a scarf. Their eyes met across the crowded space. Recognition. Remembrance. Regret, visible even from this distance. Emma followed his gaze, her hand tightening slightly in his. Someone you know. Marcus looked at Sarah one more time. Not with hatred or triumph, but with something closer to pity. Then he looked back at Emma, this woman who had shown him what real partnership looked like, what genuine integrity meant, what love could be when built on truth rather than convenience. No, he said quietly. Nobody important. They collected their drinks and left, Marcus's arm around Emma's shoulders as they walked back into the crisp evening. He didn't look back. If you're feeling this story in your chest right now, please take a moment to subscribe. Your support helps these stories of healing and redemption reach the people who need them most. Through the cafe window, Sarah watched them disappear down the street, witnessed their easy intimacy, the genuine connection that flowed between them. Her coffee grew cold as the full weight of what she had destroyed settled around her like an invisible shroud. After a moment, she gathered her things and walked alone into the gathering darkness, the gulf between choices and consequences never more apparent. Marcus and Emma returned home to finalize wedding details, the small ceremony planned for spring, just family and close friends. No grand gestures, no performative romance, just honest commitment between two people who had chosen each other with eyes wide open. Later that night, as Emma slept beside him, Marcus reflected on the journey that had led him here. The betrayal had nearly broken him, but in rebuilding, he had discovered parts of himself stronger than he'd known existed. The abandoned child who feared he was fundamentally unlovable had given way to a man who understood his worth wasn't determined by others' capacity for loyalty. He thought of Dr. Winter's words from one of their early sessions, healing isn't about forgetting the wound. It's about not letting it dictate your future. The wound remained, a scar rather than an open bleeding, but it no longer defined him. What defined him now were the choices he made daily, to trust carefully but completely, to serve others through his own experience, to build a life founded on integrity rather than illusion. Marcus Reid had survived the worst betrayal imaginable. But more importantly, he had done what the best soldiers always do. He had adapted. He had overcome. He had built something worth fighting for. If this story resonated with you, please like and share. So many people are surviving betrayal in silence and need to know they can rebuild. Drop a comment telling me your thoughts. Did Marcus go too far, or was this justice? And subscribe for more true stories that prove you can survive anything. See you in the next one. Sometimes the person who walked away simply made space for the life you deserved all along.